It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, January 18th, the new year, and I'm on my way to work. A little bit later this morning, one of my students is not at school today. I had a great conversation with William. It's been probably 2 weeks ago now, and I've been pondering it since we had that conversation, and I want to share my thoughts on it because it has implications with how we utilize information and seek information and our obligation to it. So just some backstory. William teaches a lot of classes on farming, gardening, soil science, just how to be a responsible steward of the land. And in one of his discussions that he had with several of his students, he just asked a thought-provoking question about floods. Can you know when there's going to be a flood? Can you know when there's going to be a drought? Can you determine beforehand how to mitigate the damage from either of those two situations? Essentially, he was asking, how do you know what's happening in the world around you as relates to the water cycle? And the response from one of his students was really interesting. She kind of went on a long statement of how you can't know when there's going to be a flood because only God makes floods. You can't know when there's going to be a drought because only God creates droughts, and God utilizes those weather patterns for his own purposes. And it was a really interesting discussion. And of course, my husband disagrees with that, but people start bringing God into the discussion, and you want to be respectful of their beliefs. I myself have a deep and abiding faith in a deity, in God. And so I hate to score across somebody else's faith, right? But it's so interesting. And this is where the discussion went for us. We have run into that particular attitude about the earth and how the earth works multiple times over the last several decades, because we've been farming and teaching farming classes for a long time now, at least 2 decades, and really we were kind of part-time before that. So I kind of want to address it. I think I have not had an ongoing conversation with the individual who made that statement, so I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I'm going to share my interpretation of what was said. When we say things like this flood, this drought, this disease, this whatever the circumstances that we're dealing with in the physical world is a result of God's will, we're essentially blaming God for a situation that we're facing in our life. And I think people use that blame as a method of coping, but it is a coping mechanism for stress and anxiety over something that they don't know how to deal with. And I actually firmly believe in a God who wants us to be deeply engaged in living, not avoiding, not blaming. There's actual physical reasons, weather patterns, soil patterns, and care patterns by the people living on the earth that actually cause drought and flood. To think that we are not engaged in behaviors that impact that is to be irresponsible with the gift of life and this world that we are given by our Creator. And so, in order to be a good human being, to be a good participant in this beautiful world that God has given us, my husband and I have earnestly sought, William and I, my husband's name is William. I think everybody knows that if they've watched any of these or know me personally. William and I have earnestly sought understanding of how the world works in order to be better stewards, and not just stewards, but just better participants in this world. Because there are a lot of things we think we're in charge of and we're just not, but we do have impact on. So I feel kind of compelled to address that way of thinking, that the weather patterns around the globe, that the social upheaval around the world, that the societal dilemmas that we face are acts of God and not results of the acts of mankind. I think we are more responsible, should be more responsible than that. I don't think we're being good children of God when we just blame Him. If any of you have had kids, you've probably had a circumstance where you give your child a direction to follow because you can see a little bit more of the situation they're facing than they are. Like maybe just holding something that's too big for them to carry. But they want to try, they want to try to carry it. You say, be careful, hold it this way so you don't drop it. And then they try it. They do the thing that, you warned them would happen, what might happen. And it falls, or it breaks, or something bad happens, or they get hurt. And then they immediately turn around to you as a parent and say, you made that happen. Like, no, I didn't make it happen. I could see that it was going to happen. Because I've lived longer and I've had more experience. That's how I view commandments of God, principles of God, teachings that are passed down through multiple generations. I see them as warnings and wisdom from someone who has lived much, much longer than I have, than any of us have. And are offerings to us to help us live the best life we can live. When God says, love one another, it's not because He's trying to condemn us. It's because He's telling us it's better to live together in love. When you have a commandment that says, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the earth. Think about that from a viewpoint of social psychology. It's always a really good idea to honor and recognize the value of the culture that you came from. And honoring does not mean following blindly a tradition. It just means respecting people for their beliefs. That is a social good, no matter where you are, no matter what religion you believe. The first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Believing that you are not the center of the universe, I would postulate that believing that you are not the center of the universe is one baseline key to happiness. To recognize that the cosmos revolves around an entity besides you lends you the gift of humility and the gift of awe. And both of those emotions and feelings are two major foundational positions of happiness, living a happy life. So when I hear people take a position like this particular student did in William's discussion, that there are things that just happen and we have no say, and God's going to work all these wonders that we have no understanding of and no idea of. I disagree. I think there are plenty of warnings in Scripture for what happens to the earth when we do not take care of it. Lots of warnings. And I think that there are lots of miracles that we experience that we no longer see as miracles because we can explain them. I don't think it makes it any less of a miracle just because we know the science behind it. There's a lot of people who think that in order for something to be miraculous, it has to remain shrouded in mystery. Understanding does not take away the miracle for me. It actually adds to it. Understanding the intricacy that has to exist for life to happen, just all of the minutiae of organization, which has provided a world where life could thrive, is amazingly miraculous. Understanding how that happens takes none of the wonder away. And seeking knowledge and understanding our responsibility to the physical world does not negate God's hand in our life at all. In fact, it actually, dare I say, increases our capacity to be better followers of God. I think when Jesus Christ offers a commandment like love one another, and then I follow through on that commandment by understanding another person, by getting to know their perspective, by seeking out a compassionate inquiry into their life, what makes them believe, think, and act the way they do. That is loving my neighbor. That is loving one another. And I think we have a responsibility to increase our knowledge and use it for good. That is what wisdom is the use of knowledge for good. And I do not believe that we can ever become wise when we accept ignorance and blame God for the results of our actions. I think we have a higher allegiance than that. I think our obligation is to become the best people we can be, the most knowledgeable people we can be, so that we can follow through on His commandments more fully, more compassionately, from a place of love, not a place of fear. Anyway, if you want to know how droughts and floods are influenced by people, go listen to William's YouTube. He talks about stuff like that. Because we do. We have impact. We have impact on the wars that happen in the world and social change. And more importantly, we should have an impact. Do good things. Makes the world a better place. Anyway, my thoughts for the morning. It's a beautiful morning. Have a great day.